right, so I'm Dr. Rachael, and I know sex, and I am here with a man who knows sex. Mr. Marcus is joining me today. So we've got a couple things to talk about, and the biggest one that I want to ask you is, being a guy that's been in the industry for almost going on 20 years now, what is the biggest change you've seen in the adult film industry from where it used to be to where it is now?
Right. I think the biggest change is there's more people doing it. You know, it went from like certain type of girl to the girl next door, and that's because of the internet. I think technology has propelled porn. It made it more accessible, and it's also, you know, put it in more people's hands. You know, it's not underneath the mattress anymore.
Now, how does that affect your bottom line then? I mean, like, because part of this is economics, so how does it affect a professional? Because, you know, you know how to do this. You could do this probably blindfolded, and then you have all the amateurs coming through. Does that affect the bottom line?
Nah, you know, it doesn't affect me. You know, I kind of created my own lane, and you know, I stay true to the sex. There's no gimmick. There's no niche. It's just about the sex. And so for that, you know, there's no competition.
That's great. That's great. Now, you made it sexy to wear a hat during sex. You know?
Yeah.
So Mr. Marcus is the gentleman that probably, if your guy shows up in the bedroom with a hat on, it's because he's seen one of your movies.
Right.
So in terms of that, if you had to pick one thing that you would say you're the proudest of in terms of your performance and stuff, what would that be? What's your one thing that you brought to the industry?
Probably, I mean, I don't know. I like using the word stamina. Longevity.
Definitely. So I thought that some of that was camera tricks. Is that camera tricks or is that actual stamina?
Nah, I mean, a good editor helps. You know? But you got to work with something, so I do my best, you know, to make it last as long as possible.
Okay, good. Now, bringing that up then, so if you had to give that tip to the guys, like, because, you know, being a sexologist, that's the number one thing guys ask is, how can I last longer? How can I be bigger? If you had to tell them, you know, how can you last longer, what would be your tip?
Well, I mean, a lot of things take practice. You know, don't expect to get with a woman and be, you know, everything she wants. Because usually you can be, and then it'll go downhill from there. Sometimes it's cool to start at the bottom and work your way up, kind of fill each other out. Because I've been with girls that were maybe, it started out great, and then it just kind of didn't really continue. But then I've been with girls where we took the time to learn about each other's bodies and kind of figure out and it's a trust thing, because, you know, you're always like, oh, let me do it, oh, I'll do it, and you're dominating. But then you get to a point where you're comfortable with each other, and then she just kind of let the woman do her thing, and it's a teamwork.
Yeah, team effort.
It's team effort, you know.
Okay, you know that there was this movie that came out recently called The Numbers, where all the ladies were trying to figure out, counting the numbers of guys that they'd been with, and they were counting them, and some were embarrassed and some weren't. Being an adult film star, do you know how many women you've been with? Like, have you?
Nah, I mean, people asked me that before, and then sometimes it's just rude.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to know. Okay,
so you know, with that being the case, and I know with the industry, there's a couple, like for instance, Vivid Entertainment. I know they require the actresses and actors to wear condoms.
Well, they're condom optional.
Okay.
Yeah, them and Wicked is condom, you know, mandatory.
Okay.
But Vivid is optional. You can, if you want to wear condoms, you can.
You can. Okay, and you've been very vocal throughout that, pretty much, about your opinions as to whether or not people should be required to wear condoms during adult movies. What are your opinions on that?
I'm optional. I believe it's your choice. I don't think we should force it upon someone, especially when they're consenting adults, because you know, women and men, you know, it's always men get the blame for not wanting to wear condoms, but women are the same way. There are women out there who don't want to have it worn either. And I think that speaks, and you know, if we enforce our testing is pretty rigorous, and it's continuous. You know, it kind of overlaps. We get tested so much that, you know, I trust our testing system, and I think it's something that can, you know, puts us ahead of the crowd when it comes to that, because there is so much sex and there is that testing. But if you throw condoms in the mix, it's not a bad thing. I just don't think that you should force a group of people that are willing to do it and consenting to do it however they want to do it.
Now, you mentioned that you trust the system. I have to go there because recently, for the audience that doesn't know, the porn industry had to shut down a few days because you tested positive for syphilis. And can you talk a little bit about what happened? Because there's some alternating stories as to how that happened and how you ended up transmitting it to other people.
Well, in my case, I didn't know I didn't really recognize the symptoms of syphilis because in our industry, we only test for it twice a year.
Okay.
So every 6 months, we're testing for this. We're testing for chlamydia, gonorrhea, and HIV every month.
Okay.
And during this period, we hadn't been testing for syphilis. And so I'm getting tests and working as normal, but I'm taking the test like everybody else, but we're not taking a syphilis test. And I'm not thinking about syphilis. No one in our industry is thinking about syphilis.
No one in America is thinking about syphilis.
Right. It's, the numbers were low. I mean, it had, but there's a resurgence of it. And I don't know, there was a breakout in Europe, some girls that came here and worked, and then they went there. And so we're trying to identify, but it's kind of hard when some of the people are halfway, across the country, right, on the other side of the world. I got caught up in it because I went to my private doctor because I wasn't feeling right, and I was starting to see symptoms that just going on in my body. There was something wasn't right. I thought it was stress.
Yeah.
I thought it was something internal, and I kept thinking, well, maybe it's just because I'm stressed out. And
what were some? Were you losing weight? What were some of the symptoms?
Well, you get a rash, and you get a rash in places. It can be around your genitals, or it can be. What I started to get was rashes around my hands, and that was freaking me out. And I was showing people because I was like, "What is this?" I'm just expecting someone to have the answers.
Right.
And people were just like, just go to the doctor. I tried lotion. I tried, vitamins.
Hydrocortisone, probably.
Right. Whatever I can get my hands on. I was just trying to. I thought maybe it was just a skin thing. I thought it was just continuing from the stress. And I went to my doctor, and he says, blood. He said it looks like syphilis, and we'll do a blood test. And came back, I was positive with syphilis. And then, me being the performer that I am and being in the industry I am, it kind of made the industry like, whoa, you know.
How did you feel when you got that? When he told you that? Were you?
He made no big deal about it because it's, the mistake I made was thinking it was like a virus or a disease, and it was going to. But he was, very specific. Get a shot, you'll be fine.
Don't forget to click on one of the arrows to see our most commented videos.